forceful, he could have actually won. At the end of that day, Andrew Jackson was not a happy bear. Yes, he'd won that battle, but he'd lost the West Bank, and more troops were arriving for the British side daily. In fact, a siege train had just arrived in another ship. So it would have been perfectly possible for the British to put artillery across the river and start shelling the city from the West Bank. But in the end, it was just decided that this was going to be too much trouble than it was worth, and Lambert pulled out. General things about the battle that are assumed and are wrong. It was the last battle of the War of 1812. No, it wasn't. Last battle was the capture of Fort Boyer, Mobile Bay, which was actually a British victory. Captured the colors of the 2nd US Infantry, which today the remnants of them can be seen at the Royal Hospital in Chelsea. And it was 48 hours after that was captured, news came through that a peace treaty had been signed. Also, remember that the treaty had been signed, but it had not been ratified. In fact, the peace treaty was not finally ratified by the US government until the 18th of February, 1815. So the war wasn't over. And there were also some actions, even in Georgia, little raids going on. Because again, there are no telephones, there are no radios. This takes a while to come through. So, I don't know, I've always thought that the Battle of New Orleans is very misunderstood, and it's a really important battle, but I've met so many people locally since I've been here that just, oh, well, you know, that just happened down there in Chalmette, and well, the British just marched along in straight lines and we shot them to hell, and what else do you expect? And then in England, it's sort of, well, it's this little backwater thing, and you know, it happened between the defeat of Napoleon and the Battle of Waterloo. You know, who's interested in that? However, there is an aspect of it that many people miss, and that is, you know, you hear people say, well, they can, if they'd have won the Battle of New Orleans, the British wouldn't have given it back. They would have broken the treaty and kept that land. Well, do you know that this land wasn't covered by the Treaty of Ghent? The Treaty of Ghent was signed status quo ante bellum. Means everything the way it was before the war started. Well, before the war started, nobody other than Napoleonic France and the United States thought that the Louisiana Purchase was legal. And Napoleonic France didn't exist anymore at that time. Napoleon hadn't come back from exile yet. The Spanish didn't agree with it, because in the Treaty of San Ildefonso, by which the Spanish had given the Louisiana Territory back to France, they had a clause which said if the French ever cease to rule this territory, it will retrocede to Spain. Happened to be an ally of the British. So Britain would not have had to give back any land. Not only that, of course, the great British allies in the Indian nations were up in the old Northwest, right at the other end of the Mississippi River. You know, the Shawnee. You know, Tecumseh was an honorary brigadier general of the British Army. So, I mean, what's the point in speculating? But you could speculate that if that battle had been won, and if anything had continued there, I mean, without breaking the treaty, without affecting anything that had happened in Ghent, westward expansion could have stopped. The entire future of the United States was decided at this battle. And it's something that I hope, after we do the bicentennial, you know, in a couple of years' time, maybe we'll convince some more people that it is as important as that. But anyway, that's the thing that's always fascinated me, and the more I read about it, the more exciting I get. And certainly, if you turn up anything to do with the battle, and certainly anything to do with British troops, you know, any buttons, badges, that sort of thing, I would be fascinated to know about that. What you are not going to find, I don't think anywhere, are British troops, unless they were buried by the Americans. You're not going to find British troops buried by the British with any equipment on them. British troops were always, or indeed all European troops, were stripped before they were buried, because what they're wearing is government issue. You know, you do not throw away buttons, certainly not belts, weapons, boots, anything that can be used. And of course, you're not going to go there and start just taking the buttons off and leave the rest of the clothes on. Just strip the bodies, bury the bodies, take the clothes away, deal with them as you can, either reuse them or whatever. So one of the things that's been going on at the Chalmette battlefield every now and then, where people have said, oh, let's find out where the British bodies are buried. Well, damn it, man. Read the British accounts. It says, you know, they kept trying to bury them. They would throw some soil over them. It would rain during the night. The bodies came up again. You know, you're not going to find British bodies. I have heard one account of a body being found with what looked like a remnant of a uniform. It's possible, but that was not buried by Brits, if that was the case. So anyway, I've rambled on probably longer than I should have. But if you've got any questions or anything that you want to ask, please. Yeah.
Had Jackson given any orders to burn New Orleans?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, he was absolutely determined that the British would not have New Orleans, and it's one of the reasons that I've become convinced. I'm going to try and explore this a bit more. I'm sort of planning another book, but trying to actually get the proof is difficult. Yeah. But I think it's one of the reasons that there was, in fact, an effort to hand the country over to the British, because many of the locals were thinking this fellow is a complete idiot, and if he loses this battle, he is going to completely destroy the city. And they didn't want to risk it because most of them were quite convinced that he was going to lose. But yeah, absolutely.
Do you think that the British could have been as far down as Port Sulphur? Coming in, maybe? I know they had ships bombarding Fort St. Philip. Do you think they could have let a group of soldiers out and coming up the river that way?
Probably not, because remember, yeah, they came into Fort St. Philip, but they had to beat up river. You know, the big problem, of course, is that the river doesn't flow that way. So it takes a long time to beat up river. Also, at that time, there was still the ancient log jam, literal log jam near the mouth of the river, and a ship of the line couldn't get into the river. The ship that bombarded Fort St. Philip was a bomb ship, HMS Meteor, and the bomb ships aren't very big. Yeah.
Well, the reason why I asked is because we found hundreds of musket balls in a field, and you'd find a whole line of them on one side, and then maybe 100 yards away there's another line of them. And Richard found a American button up in there.
Yeah. 72 caliber balls.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm sure they weren't. There's no account of them going anywhere near there. Now,
could they have gone around Barataria Bay and maybe come up some kind of way?
No, they didn't. But that was one of the plans. That's why they captured Fort Boyer. The idea was to come in through Mobile and come around the top of the lakes and downriver.
I was thinking maybe a group of them was supposed to meet up with Colonel Thornton or something. You know, maybe they're just trying different things to get up.